Welcome to the Whimsical Workshop. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these adorable yo-yo pumpkins. We're going to go over 2 different ways to how to make yo-yos and then how to assemble the whole pumpkin. I'm going to show you how to make a yo-yo. This is a yo-yo. It is a circle of fabric that is gathered and pulled together and gives you finished edges all the way around so you can then sew it and embellish things with it. One project we've done with it is this little yo-yo pumpkin. This was done for the David Textiles blog post, so you should be able to hop over there and check out the project. I'm going to thread our needle, roll the needle on the pad of your finger until the eye pops onto the steel beak of the Hummingbird Threader. Then you take the thread and there's a little hook at the end of the beak. You just catch the thread in the hook, you hold the thread taut as you wiggle it a little if the eye is really small, and there you go. It'll thread for you. That's the only way I've threaded needles in the last couple of years, because as you get older it gets harder to see the eye of the needle. Then we're just going to do a tailor's knot at the end. And a tailor's knot is you take the needle and you take your finger. The needle is vertical, your finger is horizontal. You put the thread across the needle like a plus sign, and you put the thread under your thumb. So I've got thumb, thread going horizontal, then needle going vertical, and then finger. And you take the thread and you loop it around the needle 3 or 4 times and slide that thread underneath your thumb. Then you push the needle up, and that will give you a tailor's knot. Perfect knot. And then I just trim off the edges. So now that we have our needle threaded, which is always the hardest part of every project. To do the traditional method, you have your circle and you're going to fold over the edge 1/4 inch, and you're going to take the needle and you're going to take it through the folded edge. And then you're going to go in and out. So I'm on the back, I'm going through the back to the front, or vice versa if you call that the back. So we bring that through and then we go back through from the front to the back. And as I get to the end of my folded fabric, I fold some more, and now you can see I am just rocking it in, flipping the fabric over, and you want to try to keep your 1/4 inch seam pretty accurate. And I stitch, let me pull this through so you can see it. There it is with the contrasting thread. Now you can see why you'd want to match it if you're doing a real yo-yo. So I'm going about every 1/8 of an inch. I rock in and out, and I'm folding the edge over. It's not an exact 1/4 inch. You could take this to the iron and fold the edge over and press it, but it doesn't have to be exact. This is a very forgiving craft. It's a very easy hand project, but the one thing you have to watch is if you're on this side, you need to make sure you go back through to the other side. So if I were to have picked this up and gone like this, that thread would loop over the top, and we don't want that. I have done that a couple times, and luckily the fabric has still gathered for me, because this is basically a gathering stitch, but you really want to try to avoid doing that. So in and out, this is the easiest way. It's just to rock it onto the needle, fold, push onto the needle. So let's go ahead and I'm going to finish this one. So as we're coming up on the end, we are going to go past our first stitch, 1 extra stitch. It is very important you do not go into your knot from the first stitch or even the first stitch. You're just kind of going right next to it. I just do that for some security, just so I know I got all the way around the ring, all the way around the circle. So here it is, I'll smooth it out for you. There is the stitch. You can see it's already trying to cup up. So once you got that, do not knot it. You need to then gather it. So you want to use a good strong thread. I'm using Orifil 50 weight for this. And I usually just leave my finger in the middle and let it kind of come around my finger. And then I just sort of roll it between my fingers to get it nice and straight and flat. And then I tug at the last little bit. We tie a knot. And you're going to I do a sailor's knot, which means you go through the loop twice. It's just a little bit stronger, or jeweler's knot. Hold my finger there to make sure it knots in the place I want, and then I just take my needle through to the back and I trim it off that way. It's just burying the tails inside the yo-yo. So there is the traditional method to make a yo-yo. So The other way to do it is there's this cool tool from Clover, the Yo-Yo Maker. Again, they come in multiple sizes. I have several, 4 or 5 different sizes. And this one will make the 1.5, which is that. I cut my circle 4 inches, which is the same for the traditional yo-yo. And you want to put, there's this part here, and it has bumps out here on the edge. Those are going to be significant in a minute. And then it has a disc with the little teeth on it and these little lines that are raised. Those are also important. So what you do, before I put the fabric in, I want to show you how the tool goes together. Those lines line up with the bumps on the frame. And you'll see in here, that aligns this horseshoe shape with the dots that are on the dial. So once you align this line with that bump, all these little marks line up. And those are going to be our points where we go in and out with our needle. So that's what, it's a very low-tech, easy tool, but it makes perfect yo-yos. So you take your square, you take your circle, you want to make sure that it's at least 1/4 inch bigger all the way around from the disc. It could even be 3/8 or 1/2 inch. It's just, it'll be a lot of fabric in the middle. So if you wanted like a poofy yo-yo, you could use a wider seam allowance. So I put this on the center of my fabric. I see where my line is. I have the frame with the dot at the top, and I just pop it in. And you can see there's the dot, there's the line, and I just push down, and you hear it snap at each of those points. Okay, so once there's 5 of them, once they're all snapped down, now you see the fabric is flayed over the disc. So then you flip this over. Now on the back of the tool, I'm using my finger to push the fabric down as I sew. That will become clear why I do that as I start sewing. So again, you have your needle, you have it threaded, knotted, and I like to start on where one of the bumps are, but it doesn't matter. You can start anywhere on the circle. But you do want to go from the back to the front, and you want to come up on the right side of one of the horseshoes. And then we're going to go down the left side of the horseshoe and then come back up. So you always are coming up on the right side, always going down on the left side, because if you go down on the left side, or you come up, let's do it this way. If you come up on the left side, and I go down, I'm going to then have a thread over the plastic, and I'm not going to be able to remove my piece. So you always want to come up on the right side of, unless you're a lefty, in which case you will do the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. But you cut for a righty, you come up on the right side of the horseshoe. It's not really a horseshoe, but it's kind of like a horseshoe. Come up on the right, I'm folding the fabric under with my finger to make sure I'm going through both layers, and then I go back out on the left, travel underneath, come up through the white, come up through the right, go down with the left. Again, always making sure I got that fabric smoothed on the back. That's really the biggest thing. But these are so easy to do. Kids can do them. You can do them with like not any concentration really. So if you're doing it at a sporting event or watching TV or anything where you're not really paying attention, this is a fun, easy way. You could just start making yo-yos out of your scraps, and before you know it, you'll have hundreds of these. And you can just sew them all together and make all kinds of cool projects, purses, wall hangings. We are using these for a 3D pumpkin that is for a blog post on David Textiles, so you can check that out. Hopefully by the time I post the yo-yo video, the pumpkin post on the David Textiles blog will be up. And we just keep going round and round. You see how easy this is? I'm not really struggling as much as I was with the traditional method. It just sort of holds everything in place for you. It folds the fabric under. And again, they're not real expensive. I got these on Amazon. I'll put that link below. But the yo-yos are just really, really fun. You'll find people become yo-yo addicts. So we're coming around. Got one more. So I've done, this is the last one. Same as I did on the traditional, I will come back over the first stitch, avoiding the knot, and come back up, okay? Now I have it going all the way around, and we're ready to pop out our yo-yo and assemble it. So you take the hole, your finger through the hole, just pop that plastic piece out. Then you're gonna pop, just carefully roll this out. There we go. And just like the first yo-yo, we're going to pull this stitch together, and I kind of fold it in on itself as I pull. Let it kind of go around my finger a little bit. And then if you have any raw edges kind of tucked out, just push them in, and there we go. There is our yo-yo. So you can see it's a little faster, a little easier than standing there trying to fold over my edges. So then I will knot my thread, same as I did before. And that is how we make traditional and tulle yo-yos. This one's a little, I guess if you straighten it out, it's good. So there you go. There's two ways to do yo-yos. I cut the circle to make our pumpkin body. You're gonna take a 15-inch square, and you're gonna fold it into quarters. And I'll give you a template for an arch, but if you happen to have a Circle Savvy ruler, which is what I have right here, you can go to the slot for 15-inch circle. You can align it. All right, so my square is too big, or too small for 15 inches, so we are going to cut a 14-inch circle. Doesn't matter. I will give you the template for whatever the circle ends up being. So that's 14 inches. You just align the folded edge on the 1/4-inch seam allowance line. Take your rotary cutter and follow the groove with your ruler. Make sure you cut through all the layers. And there we go. Perfect circle. So the next thing we need to do is make a hole for our stem, which is going to go in the top right at the center. So I am going to fold this back up, aligning all the edges. And I am going to carefully, because I don't know how big my stem is going to be yet, I'm just going to make a little cut here. Like that. And if I need to make it bigger, I will, but that's my stem hole. So for this one, I hand sewed all of these onto the fabric, and I formed the pumpkin first and then put the yo-yos on. To make our big pumpkin body, we're gonna do the same thing we did for the yo-yo. We're gonna turn under the edge, 1/4 inch, and go in and out of the folded layers. So once we got our pumpkin stuffed and ready to go, I started at the bottom and I sewed a yo-yo over the hole. And then I used a glue stick, which I'm going to show you that right now, and I I glued all these yo-yos to the pumpkin just so I could have an idea of where they go on the pumpkin. And I am just using a washable school glue stick, Elmer's glue stick, rub it on the back of my fabric, and then I position this where I want it, and I just hold it in place for a few seconds, and you can see here where it's going to go. This one's gonna go here. And I just added these all the way around the pumpkin shell, all the way around the fabric pumpkin. And if you had, like in this case, there's not a lot. I mean, it was like if I didn't squeeze this in, because we're not doing math to figure this out, we're just squeezing them on. I just sort of push them in and I'll sew that in, and you know, it'll be great. It'll look good. So you're just sort of, you know, shifting and moving and aligning them where you want them, and then you take the glue stick and you just glue it down in place. Now, if you were using a really good sticky permanent fabric glue, that's all you'd have to do is just glue them down. But I am going ahead and doing the next step, because this is not permanent, and I am tacking each end of the yo-yos to the other. So this one, I've got a thread here already going, needle and thread. So this one is tacked at that point, that point, that point, that point, that point, that point. Then I came up and I tacked it here, 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 here. Now I'm working on the next round. So I come up through the pumpkin itself, catch the edge of the one yo-yo, came over to this corner, or this edge, go back through this edge. I'll go through this one again. And then I go, okay, I need to travel over here. So now what I do is I go down into the pumpkin itself and just travel over. And I'll do that until my thread is too short, and I'll knot off my thread and I'll start another round. And I just want to I mean, they're not like, you know, you don't have to do it 100 times, just 1 or 2 times through each yo-yo, just to tack it together. It will give it a nicer finish in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these yo-yos tacked, and then I'm going to show you the last step of our pumpkin, which is how to make the stem, which will look like that. And this is my first pumpkin I did, so had like a little white spot there, so I'll probably pop some of these off and squeeze another yo-yo in to fix that. But you can see it's just really very easy. This one had a white pumpkin base. This has an orangey yellow to make these pumpkins. So we'll come back here in a minute and I'll show you how to put the stem on. Okay, so we have all our yo-yos sewn onto our pumpkin, and now the only thing missing is the stem. I'm going to show you how I make that, and then we will have our yo-yo pumpkin done. So first I did is I cut a 6" by 22" strip. The length of your strip depends on how big you cut this hole and how fat we make our stem. I cut a fairly big hole here. I did a 1". I would probably recommend doing like a 3/4 inch. I think that might be a little too big, but we're gonna make it work. So the first thing you do is you take your strip over to the iron, you fold it in half, and you press it to get a center line. Then you can fold these into the center line and press them, and then fold it closed, and that's gonna get us our stem. This stem would only have been about 1.5 inches tall, and I think because my hole is bigger, I need a taller stem. So I only folded in each end 1 inch. Instead of going all the way to the center, I did about half that. Then you fold it in half again and you press, and you can see now I have about a 2-inch high stem piece. Okay, now we're going to roll this up to make the stem. So you just start at one end and just roll it up, and if it starts to kind of bubble on you, just smooth it and tuck it into the roll as you do it. And you want to make sure you roll this up to be the diameter of your hole, and it needs to be snug. We're going to glue this in, but that's why if you cut a smaller hole, you would make a smaller roll of fabric, meaning your strip would be shorter. So this is definitely a make it and measure it. I would cut my strip longer than you think you need and be able to trim it to size instead of cutting the strip exact to size fresh out of the gate. Okay, so once you get to the end, just tuck it in and see if it's going to fit the hole, which it will. And then the short end, the raw edge, you're going to fold that piece in, like a ½ inch, doesn't matter, and you're going to roll this up. That will give you a finished edge, and then you're going to sew it, hand sew it together to create the tube. We're just going to do a quick ladder stitch here, and if you don't know how to do a ladder stitch, I'll link it below. I have a video on how to do a ladder stitch. You go in and you go out. You could do a whip stitch, but a whip stitch you're going to see the stitches, and if you do that, it's totally your preference. So I have it all sewn. So there's my stem. I'm going to trim off the end, and then this gets glued in here, and you can push it down as far as you want it to go. And I use fabric glue. This time I'm using Precision Piecing, this is Seam Align Glue from Acorn. I did it on the first one. I glued it in, and then it was a little bit loose, so then I had to re-glue it. So you may have to do that. I'm making sure I put glue around the edges. Okay, and make sure it's not bubbly, just smooth it out, because when you push it into the pumpkin hole, you don't want it smearing all over the place. All right, so then we just insert the stem into the pumpkin, and then I use a little more glue just around the edge here. There we go. And we're gonna let that glue dry, and that will be our finished yo-yo pumpkin. Here are our adorable little yo-yo pumpkins all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to make yo-yos and the pumpkins. You can always leave me a comment below, let me know what you think, and I thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.